The Israelites in Egypt, Exodus and the Wilderness. Number 22. Wandering in the Wilderness with Yahweh. Nomads of Yahweh. Hieroglyphic inscriptions mentioning the land of the Nomads of Yahweh were discovered on the walls of 2 New Kingdom Egyptian temples and a temple pillar in Sudan. Currently, these are the earliest known texts that contain the name Yahweh, the name of the God in the Hebrew Bible. The first of these to be discovered, found on a topographical list at the Amara West temple, dates to earlier than about 1300 BC, during the reign of Seti I in the 19th Dynasty, and is probably a copy of the inscription on the wall of the Soleb temple from 1400 BC in the 18th Dynasty. The Temple of Amun at Soleb was built on the left bank of the Nile, north of the Third Cataract, around 1400 BC by the 18th Dynasty pharaoh Amenhotep III. This temple was dedicated to Amun and to Amenhotep III as a deity. When first noted by explorers, the magnificent hypostyle hall was in ruins, toppled, and partly covered by sand, but many inscriptions that had been carved into the pillars and walls had survived the millennia. Among these inscriptions was an extensive list of conquered or subdued places and people, several of whom were described as nomads. 18th Dynasty Egyptian texts repeatedly mention nomadic people living in the wilderness east of Egypt and in Canaan during the Late Bronze Age, even specifying that some were tent dwellers. The Soleb inscriptions further identify these different areas and people by associating them with a location or a deity, and at least 2 of the inscriptions claim defeat or subjugation of a nomadic group that worshipped Yahweh, specifically noting the land of the Nomads of Yahweh, located somewhere in Edom, Moab, and the Canaan area. Yet the only known military campaign of Amenhotep III was to suppress a rebellion in Kush, so the claims of the conquest were probably propaganda and reflect Egyptian influence from the time of Thutmose III. One of the inscriptions was on an interior wall of the temple, following an Egyptian practice of showcasing a list naming conquered places and people. The relief on a pillar is the best preserved and shows a fragmentary bound shasu, nomad, prisoner, and with the name Land of the Nomads of Yahweh in the cartouche, spelled phonetically using hieroglyphs to represent the sounds YHWH. Not only do the letters match an Egyptian transliteration, but there is no land or city determinative, indicating that it must be a personal name rather than a place. Since the only ancient people known to have worshipped Yahweh were the Israelites or Hebrews, it logically follows that these nomads were the Israelites before they settled in Canaan. This inscription is the earliest yet discovered reference to Yahweh, the personal name of God, in the Hebrew Bible. In the 15th and 14th centuries BC, the people of Yahweh, the Israelites, wandered in the wilderness like nomads and continued to live a nomadic lifestyle for many years while conquering and settling Canaan. That the name Yahweh and the Nomads of Yahweh, descriptive of the Israelites, would be found on an Egyptian temple from around 1400 BC demonstrates that the Egyptians of the 18th dynasty and the pharaoh himself were familiar with the Israelites and the God they worshipped, suggesting contact and dialogue around the time of Moses, the Exodus, and the wandering in the 15th century BC. Numbers 13:32 says, Yahweh's anger burned against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years. So this inscription is archaeological evidence for the Exodus.
I see the evidence of your goodness all over my life.